So we launched our game in November of last year, and clearly we didn't get it quite right.
Welcome back to the third and last part of my grisly dissection of the gaming year 2018. Looking at the way the AAA video game industry behaves increasingly reminds me of unsympathetic movie representations of pre-revolutionary France. You know, that peak level of self-destructive decadence they attained just before the peasants kicked in the doors to the palace and the show, as they say, was well and truly over. The perfumed dandies are flouncing around inside the palace, rolling around in our money and occasionally coming to the window to peer into the dirty city streets of the gaming community to look down their noses at us, to decry the filthy and stinking entitled peasants outside. The same entitled peasants that incidentally are bankrolling their whole fucking shit show. The video game world is now a place where our compensation for their absolute failure is them keeping all of our money, refusing to give us refunds and forcing us to relinquish our rights to take them to court before we even download the software. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the punishment for failure is being given a $15 million reward. That's about 50% of the budget to make a decent, large-scale independent video game. That's potentially a couple of hundred people employed for a few years and a few million happy players. But no, instead of healthy business, let's give millions to people whose only real achievement has been to fuck over customers, fuck over fans and supporters, and most importantly further drag the gaming industry into disrepute. Meanwhile, vast swathes of the gaming media are happily selling out gamers and slurping at one of the nipples of the devil's 13 tits, trying to get as much creamy milk whilst it still flows, because they don't really give a monkeys about you, me, or video games. They just want to be the next PewDiePie and get as rich as they can on the way. Gamers are getting a fucking shit deal. Most of the industry is ripping us off, and many of our peers are selling us out. And a vast amount of resources are being deployed to make sure this situation continues. They spend a lot of money making sure people who complain are silenced, and gamers are convinced that everything is just fine and fucking dandy. When we complain, we are labelled as negative, entitled and toxic. Everyone inside the palace keeps telling us that they are listening to our complaints, and they are working on it, and that they've learned from their mistakes, and their next game release will be better. Which we incidentally have to pay full price for. There's not really much of an incentive for AAA publishers to make good games. If they can keep persuading us that the next one will be better, and we keep on buying it, well, if history has taught us one lesson, it's that when people are hungry, overtaxed and pissed off, lies only keep them happy for so long. If you don't address the problem, eventually shit gets wild and the palace doors get kicked in. I think this is precisely the point we've reached with the video game industry. Increasingly volatile and furious reactions to microtransactions. Governments investigating and legislating against loot crates and microtransactions. Share price instability. Profit warnings. And all the time this is happening, small independent developers are cranking out fantastic games on a nominal budget and highlighting the extreme magnitude of the bullshit we're being fed by the big businesses in the industry. So without further ado, best indie game of 2018. While 2018 was a giant shitfest for mainstream gaming, perhaps the worst year ever, it was a spectacular year for small independent studios. Frankly, the indies embarrassed AAA publishers by repeatedly producing inspired, original and well-received games on a shoestring budget that shamed big budget companies. Shame I don't play more of them really. For example, here are some lies that were discredited by independent game companies this year. You need to be a live service game to get regular fast patches from an EA partnered YouTuber. Total horseshit. the game Scum was throwing content patches out of the door like there was no tomorrow. And that was early access. We can't easily patch games because the console approval process takes so long. From Ubisoft. Total horseshit. Kingdom Come Deliverance patched 3 times in a month on all platforms, and that's an indie game. We need microtransactions in video games to break even. Total horseshit. Loads of indies are making lots of profit by making good games. Besides, billions of dollars of surplus money is not what I call breaking even. We had companies like Bethesda puking up abominations like Fallout 70 fuck, whilst little companies like Unknown Worlds Entertainment were absolutely caning it with titles like Subnautica. There were so many good indie games in 2018, I'm going to miss out more than I'm even aware exist. So forgive me for that, genuinely. Feel free to promote your favourite indie game in the comments of this video. First off, here are some nominations for games I haven't got around to playing even if I bought them, based on the repeated recommendations of viewers. Subnautica, Mutant Year Zero, Postscriptum, and Call of Cthulhu are regularly recommended to me. Buyer beware, I have not played them myself, and all are of a particular theme and taste preference, but I know a few people who love each and every one of them. Do your research before you buy. Scum absolutely gets nominated. An open world survival game where you get to choose your prison tattoos, hunt, camp, craft, kill, and shitting and pissing is a minigame. What is there not to like? I played it a bit, and for the few quid that I paid, I have really enjoyed it. This is still a work in progress and it's early access, but I would recommend buying this. A sneaky nomination goes to Wasteland 2 for the Nintendo Switch release. So I can craftily slip Wasteland 2 into a 2018 list. Wasteland 2 is the spiritual descendant of the Fallout franchise made by Brian Fargo, the creative genius behind Wasteland, Fallout, Dragon Wars, and Mario Teaches Typing. It's an isometric top-down RPG in the most traditional sense, and proved so popular after the crowdfunder that Wasteland 3 is slated for 2019. Vampire from Don't Nod Entertainment was another fine nomination. This game, like many indie titles, falls outside the traditional mould, but despite some lukewarm reviews in some quarters, it's got some really very interesting ideas going on that set it apart from a lot of games. On top of this, you get to live the life of a vampire, creeping around a digital world, sneaking up on the weak and vulnerable, and sucking the very lifeblood out of them. It gives you a literal taste of what it feels like to be a AAA game publisher. Frostpunk gets a hefty nomination, despite being of slightly limited scope at release. Over the year, they have provided further free scenarios and expanded the game significantly. This said, I thought I got value for money from day one. I fucking loved this game. It is a spectacularly novel concept, very refreshing to play and full of real moral choices. Not silly fake moral choices like most games. I mean full on, do I be a bastard choices. Do I send children to work in the factories? Do I send workers to certain deaths so we don't run out of coal in the night? Shall we eat the dead because we've run out of pies? And cannibalism is always a lol. In video games at least. I'm less of a fan in real life, but that, as they say, is a story for another day. But these awards would not be complete if I did not include the maverick of the indie underdog gaming scene. This franchise came out of nowhere and established itself almost immediately as a cult classic that is here to stay. The game director was repeatedly set upon by the mainstream and independent media alike, just for daring to hold opinions and values that did not conform to the current politically correct sensibilities of the gaming media. Despite the hate campaign, the unjust accusations of misogyny, being blacklisted by certain outlets, and all the while facing relentless and vicious criticism and personal attacks, he hung on to his singularly unique vision, and through relentless persistence and dedication, turned that vision into video game history. The game I'm talking about, obviously, is Super Seducer 2. I'm going to include Super Seducer 2 in my list of indie games for 2018 because of the following reasons. 1. I think the Super Seducer games are funny. I'm sorry, my mates despair with me when I say this, but intentionally and mostly unintentionally, the games are funny, and I find myself laughing my fucking tits off when I play them. And judging from the amount of people that live stream them, other people find them funny too. 2. People enjoy playing the Super Seducer series. Check the Steam ratings. His fucking Steam ratings are through the roof. People buy his guides for chatting up women and seem perfectly satisfied with the product they receive. 3. Despite everyone, including myself, taking the piss out of the first game, it was so successful he released a sequel, and he's releasing Super Seducer 3 in 2019. 4. It's better value than Fallout 76. And did not make me feel ill like Fallout 76. Okay, there were a few bits that made me feel queasy, but it didn't make my brain feel compressed like Fallout 76 did. 5. The DLC is actual DLC, like proper old-fashioned downloadable content that costs money to make and delivers added value. Whether people like it or not, Super Seducer is a franchise that satisfies its customers, and they at least think they're getting value for money. You have to give Richard Rowena credit for this. He is keeping his customers happy, and doing a much better job at keeping customers happy than the AAA studios did in 2018. And that is possibly the strangest factoid that emerged from 2018 gaming history. In the year 2018, a pickup artist had better average customer satisfaction ratings than his AAA counterparts. I mean, just fucking what the absolute fucking fuck is that? On top of all of these reasons, I don't like how some people bleat on all day about freedom of speech, but when Super Seducer got censored by Sony, suddenly all these virtue signalling pricks magically ran out of fucks to give about the principles of politically based censorship. Because it was political, and it was about politics. In fact, some people thought it was brilliant and celebrated his misfortune. Some of his critics behaved like a pack of hyenas waiting for a baby elephant to give up the fight so they could tear into its flesh. If you think that freedom of speech is a privilege granted only to people aligned with your values, then you're just another fascist. On top of this, I didn't like the way people deliberately misrepresented Richard Rowena and abandoned any pretense of journalistic integrity or fairness because they evidently decided, nay, deemed him unworthy of being treated with the same basic journalistic standards that they apply to more morally virtuous entities in the gaming sphere, like AAA game publishers, with large legal departments. That is not how fucking journalistic standards work. You don't just switch them off if you think someone is an arsehole. If you deploy them like that, they're no longer standards. They're just tactics. I know I don't exactly have Pulitzer Prize levels of journalistic standards myself, but at least I try to fact check everything to the best of my abilities, and I don't just start lying about stuff in order to service an agenda or to serve up a hit piece on someone. My standards might be low, but at least they're constant and distributed fairly, albeit in meagre portions. My entire research team and budget pretty much boils down to a Google search. But that's better than just fucking lying. It's not okay to bullshit about someone, misrepresent someone and celebrate their censorship just because you don't like them, or the message they deliver. It's like the gaming media and the gaming community just decided, he's a pickup artist, so let's grab some rocks and stone him to death. Richard Rowena, and by implication his video game series, might be a bit creepy, weird, unintentionally amusing and ego-driven, but representing him as a predatory misogynistic abuser is plain dishonest. I mean, he might well be all of those things, but there's certainly no evidence of it. That I've seen, at least. At the moment. He deserves the same rights as the rest of us, and he would still deserve all those rights, even if he was guilty of all these things people said about him. So yeah, Super Seducer 2 makes it into my nomination for Best Indie Game of the Year 2018. How about them apples? Or should I say melons? Look, I'm not saying Ricky the Dicky Rowena is a good guy. He clearly has ego issues which resulted with him slapping a DMCA strike on a tiny YouTube channel. So yeah, he's a fucking idiot, and he definitely wins at least a silver medal in the Arsehole Olympics. Sure, he apologised and retracted the copyright strike and offered the YouTube channel I Am Patty Jack the princely sum of $50 to cover lost revenue. And granted, it seems clear that Richard Rowena didn't realise the full implications of hitting a channel with a DMCA strike based on the exchange between him and the channel, which is a matter of public record. But all this being said, not being aware of the consequences is no defence in a court of law if you recklessly break the law to harm someone, as revenge for a personal slight. Filing a false DMCA strike is fraudulent. And whilst $50 was probably more than fair to cover the lost ad revenue, it certainly wasn't fair compensation for putting a channel on the first of 3 steps to total annihilation, the stress it caused to I Am Patty Jack, and any costs he incurred with his time and labour positioning himself to fight the DMCA strike. Add to this, Rowena recently offered to give $25,000 to charity if Video Game Donkey reviewed Super Seducer 2, which he did. So he fucks over a small YouTuber and offers him $50, but has the cash to offer 25 grand to charity for the sake of promotion. I can say from personal experience that unless you are a massive channel, YouTube is about spending vast amounts of your spare time working your arse off for sweatshop wages, but most likely making a loss. How about he gives 20k to charity and 5k to I Am Patty Jack? $50 doesn't cover the cost of the adrenaline spike you get when you find out one of your videos got demonetised. So it certainly doesn't cover the costs of finding out that you got a copyright strike on your fucking channel. How about just giving 25 grand to Patty Jack? All this being said, I personally won't believe that $25,000 actually went to charity until I see the receipts. Like, factually see legal documents. Actually, what the fuck am I thinking? I talked myself out of the nomination. But it was a nice idea at the time. I think Richard Rowena still needs to rehabilitate himself before he wins any nominations from me. I guess the one critically important takeaway from all of this is that when a guy like that is doing a better job than the AAA publishers at making video games that satisfy customers, well, I think it's safe to say that 2018 might have been a fairly shit year for gamers. I'm sure that anyone that follows my channel suspects what is coming next. The Independent Game of the Year award goes to Kingdom fucking Come Deliverance, the giant killer of the historical RPG scene. Made on a tiny budget, partially crowdfunded, and hands down one of the best games of 2018. How would you react if someone came up to you in the pub and said this? I've got this idea for a video game. I can't do a Daniel Vavra voice, so you just forgive me. It's a 100% historically accurate action role-playing game set in 1406 in Bohemia. It's totally realistic. You have to eat, wash, clean your clothes. It's slow-paced. You have no superpowers, no magical abilities, and you'll spend most of the first day playing it collecting nettles, picking up potatoes, buying charcoal, and getting punched out by a fucking drunk. You got no money, no armour, no weapons, and the only thing that you're good at is running away and shitting in your green tights. The game is basically hardcore mode, but there are plans to make it even more difficult with a DLC. Oh yeah, and there's no save function. You have to sleep in a bed to save, or you lose all your progress. Then they explained that, surprise fucking prize, they had no money to make this game. You would rightly think he was probably fucking batshit crazy. Well, game director Daniel Vavra clearly is batshit crazy and ignored everyone. Got a major publisher interested, set up a Kickstarter, got more funding, makes the video game and sells over 1 million copies. And the game is fucking superb and a critical success. Yeah, I am legally obliged to mention the bugs at launch, but they kept cranking out patches and hotfixes faster than any big publisher can be bothered to do. And considering this is a game with the scope of Fallout 3, made for a fraction of the budget, they did good work. Personally, I didn't have much bother with bugs, and most of the problems of the game and DLC appear to be cleaned up fairly quickly. I think this game is spectacular. I like what this game is, and what it stands for. It's a fucking work of art. On a more sobering point, this game also shows how good games can be when they are made for a fair price and fair profit. When major titles are coming out for 80 quid for the full version and they are broken pieces of unfinished shit full of microtransactions, it really highlights how most AAA games are only designed to suck as much money out of the customer before we realise it's a pile of crap and they start advertising their next big amazing release. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a beautiful medieval simulator that succeeds excellently at plunging you into the world of 1406 Bohemia. You can practically feel the straw in your mattress, the mud squelching under your feet, and eventually the skulls being crushed under your fucking mace. You can hunt in the woods, fight in the streets, and fuck in the bathhouses. It's a finely crafted, visceral, boots on the ground experience, which I still believe almost certainly influenced the late stages of development of Red Dead Redemption 2. Kingdom Come Deliverance is unquestionably an excellent game, and winner of Best Indie Game of 2018. Everyone at Warhorse Studios wins the admiration and respect of every gamer that knows a damn thing about the industry and quality video games, and realises just how much of a miracle it is that you managed to bring this game to completion. You will be eternally remembered in the halls of video game history as the David that shamed the Goliaths of the gaming industry. At some point, I might also send Daniel Vavra a bottle of whiskey, but I drank the bottle I was going to send to him and haven't replaced it yet. It was really very nice, by the way. Thank you for that. "21Kilotons, Game of the Year 2018. Despite 2018 being one relentless clusterfuck of train wreck AAA releases, I took heart in the fact that there were some very good games released in 2018. I'm also quite optimistic about the future of gaming. Whilst in 2018 we saw most AAA companies go into crisis and meltdown, it was a year where some amazing games shot right out of the ether from independent studios. So despite my salt, vitriol and general pessimistic demeanour, and the fact that 2018 was largely a fuckfest for the consumer and our favourite franchises, maybe this is the end of days scenario we need to endure before a paradigm shift occurs in the industry. So what games weren't absolutely fucking awful and shitty in 2018? God of War and Spider-Man are both solid nominations. Very good games, well received, popular, not chock full of microtransactions, and Spider-Man even gave away a free Christmas outfit to the players. Neither game really did it for me, but they were solid fare. Put it this way, if every game released in 2018 was as good as God of War and Spider-Man, I would have very little to bitch about. And I like to bitch about stuff. Christ alive, imagine a world where I had to sit here and say nice things about video games. It would be horrible. Hitman 2 gets an honourable mention, if for no other reason than the customers are happy. You get what they say on the tin, and some of the Hitman 2 comedy murder videos I've watched are fucking hilarious. credit where credit is due. IO Interactive have made a real-world murder/accident simulation engine with vast comedy possibilities that in and of itself deserves high praise and recognition. I was going to mention Prey Mooncrash, but until I get my refund on Fallout 76, as far as I'm concerned, Bethesda can go and fuck themselves ragged with a large cactus. They've already stolen my money. I'm not going to give them free promotion. Sorry Arcane Studios, you lose out on your cookie because of who you do business with. Okay, I'll be honest, I wasn't really going to nominate Prey Mooncrash. It was just another cheap opportunity to tell Bethesda Softworks to eat a bag of fucking dicks because they ripped us all off. Well, I found that strangely cathartic. I feel a lot better now I've got that out of my system. Like I finally managed to show someone on the dole where the bad men at Bethesda touched me. I guess the reality here is that whilst there were a lot of good games and especially a lot of awesome indie games released in 2018, they were mostly the kind of games that weren't really my thing. So for me, the ultimate choice of Game of the Year boiled down to a choice between Kingdom Come Deliverance or Red Dead Redemption 2. I have played both of these games to death. I think they are both excellent. I think they both contain many elements that qualify them as being considered works of art. I mean that in a very literal sense, in the same way that a movie like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or The Seventh Seal are considered works of art. But I had a big problem deciding whether Kingdom Come Deliverance or Red Dead Redemption 2 should be Game of the Year. Fucking hell, why do both games have to have triple-barreled names? As far as value for money goes, personal taste aside, Red Dead Redemption 2 gives more game for your buck than Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's a huge game. But here is the conundrum I faced. My heart and soul just wanted to say Kingdom Come Deliverance is Game of the Year on fucking principle. My intellectual brain told me that technically Red Dead Redemption 2 offers more value for money, and it's well polished too. I wanted emotionally to give Game of the Year to Kingdom Come Deliverance because it's an indie studio punching above its weight. I didn't want to give it to Red Dead Redemption 2 because in my heart I knew the game was only made that well because it was a conduit for fucking microtransactions in the incoming online game. I didn't want to favour Red Dead Redemption 2 because its story and characters are, let's face it, cunningly crafted to be politically correct. Although I appreciate the creative decisions behind that and I'm not trying to fault them for it. I wanted to favour Kingdom Come Deliverance because it was historically accurate, and when challenged, Daniel Favre, the man in charge of Kingdom Come Deliverance, basically told everyone to fucking suck it. This also throws up another issue when judging games. How much should my decision be swayed by the context, history or ethical issues surrounding the games? Rockstar did a very thorough job of compartmentalising the single player game from the online microtransactions. Currently, if you just played the single player game, you wouldn't even see all the microtransactional fuckery from the online game. And whilst thinking about this conundrum, I realised the painful truth, but also realised there's a kind of beautiful conclusion to this. I didn't want to give the prize to Red Dead Redemption 2 because they were a massive studio with billions of dollars and only made the game so fucking desperately awesome because it was a loss leader for microtransactions. And I did want to give it to Kingdom Come Deliverance, despite its flaws, because they made the game on a shoestring. I guess the beautiful truth was this: Rockstar Studios had enough money to send people to the moon and set up a base there. I'm not kidding, they have billions and billions of dollars. And even if my maths is off, they could have thrown in with Elon Musk and it would have been a certainty. Rockstar has the financial power to expand the realm and habitation range of the only intelligent civilization that we know exists in the universe. So what did they do? They made a fucking video game as a means to peddle microtransactions to, primarily, children. A superb video game admittedly, but nevertheless, they made a game to sell crap to kids. A wonderful game made for insidious purposes. Warhorse Studios, the makers of Kingdom Come Deliverance, had nothing. Well, more precisely, in the beginning, there was nothing. Then Daniel Favre had a vision. He had a vision and a tin cup, which he basically went around shaking in the faces of game publishers as he begged for money. Then he raised 1.5 million through a Kickstarter to prove the demand for the project, and then major finance came on board. Then went on to make one of the best RPG games in years for a grand total of 36 million, which is a fairly small amount for a title of that scope. Warhorse Studios had nothing, and they made this. Rockstar had enough resources to send people to the moon, and they made this. The beautiful truth is that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a better overall game than Kingdom Come Deliverance. And that's okay. Because it should be. Because the game is a folly. Kingdom Come had a budget of 36 million. That's only about 12% of the marketing budget for Red Dead Redemption. Conservative estimates say that Red Dead Redemption 2 cost a minimum of 300 million to make, possibly as much as 650 million, with some high-end estimates going up as far as $1 billion. To put it in perspective, Grand Theft Auto cost 246 million to make 5 years ago. We can only guesstimate. What we can say with reasonable certainty is that Red Dead Redemption 2 had at least 10 times the budget of Kingdom Come Deliverance. So it's okay that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a better game, because it should be. Rockstar have a great team, talented designers, unlimited resources, and between 10 and 30 times the budget. The single player was a loss leader. The philosophy was this: let's make the best fucking game possible, and it doesn't matter how much it costs, because we'll make billions of dollars later in the online game. Obviously, the irony is that it looks like gamers are getting exceptional value for money because the single player is superb, and because the world has turned, and tolerance for microtransactions and in-game selling bullshit has vaporised. I'm not exactly sure Rockstar are going to be making as much in the online version of the game as they imagined. Red Dead Redemption 2 is at grave risk of becoming Rockstar's folly. A beautiful mistake, and I'm sure they will break even, but they threw their checkbooks on the table and said YOLO, thinking that Red Dead Online would be a license to print money. But that is certainly not how things are looking at the moment. I really wanted to champion the indie underdog here, and despite Rockstar having 10 to 30 times the budget, they didn't produce 10 times the game, not even close. If Warhorse Studios had the same budget, Kingdom Come Deliverance would probably be game of the decade. Red Dead Redemption 2 single player, it pains me to say, is a fucking excellent game. And whilst I can't say it's better or worse than Kingdom Come in an objective sense, because I love the narrative in both games, it plays fucking superbly. It is sprawling, enormous, and riddled with the finest fucking details wherever you go. I have wrestled with this choice for a while now, and then in a moment of clarity I realised that ultimately the decision all comes down to booze. More precisely, whiskey. You see, I have to admit that I prefer the story and feel of Kingdom Come Deliverance. I don't think Red Dead Redemption 2 is as well storied, and not quite as well structured. This is very subjective stuff, I'll admit. What is not subjective is that Red Dead Redemption 2 is as polished as fuck, enormous, and exceptionally well made. You see, if I ask you to choose between Lagavulin and Johnny Walker Green Label, well, that's a no-brainer. Lagavulin is the better whiskey. But what if I ask you to choose between one bottle of Lagavulin or one case of Johnny Walker Green Label? Both whiskies are very nice. One is clearly better. But 11 extra bottles is 11 extra fucking bottles. When I looked at it like that, I had to give it to Red Dead Redemption 2. Spoiler alert. Red Dead Redemption is enormous, expansive and beautiful. There's a hunting minigame, smoking minigame, gambling minigames, riding minigames, fishing minigames. Its minigames have minigames. You can spend days hunting in the Grizzly Mountains, robbing trains, or exploring. The story isn't perfect, but let's face it, it's better than most video games this year. It immerses you in the historical period that was the inspiration for so many of the best westerns. Not the shitty ones, the good ones. You can almost smell the cordite and the oil on the guns. This game got me creeping through bushes trying to study ducks and squirrels to cap achievements. And I fucking hate wildlife. The sooner they concrete over the whole world, the better. This game made me want to go camping, experience the wilderness and explore nature. The very fact this game has made me contemplate experiencing such deviant and vile fucking concepts in itself deserves an award. Normally nature only impinges on my consciousness when I'm trying to figure out how much bleach I need to pour into the river to poison all the fish. Now I'm fucking worried that my smell might be upsetting the fucking deer in the park. God help me. This game makes me want to buy a replica Colt Peacemaker so I can roll the cylinder in my fingers to relax. How do you relax? Yoga? A stress ball? Breathing exercises? Fuck that. If you really want to relax, get a Colt and just calmly roll that cylinder in your fingers. Fuck Buddha, this clicking noise is all you will ever need to centre yourself. This game has rain, snow, blistering heat and fog. It's got fucking rainbows. It actually has rainbow effects if the weather is just right. It even has some incredibly obscure references to culture and Native American history, like the trail trees and Leif Erikson, which in itself is a few good hours of reading if you're that way inclined. And then there is all the secret content and Easter eggs, some of which are really genuinely clever and entertaining stuff. When I thought I had finally finished Red Dead Redemption, I foolishly and casually thought to myself, I'll just unleash my inner completionist before replaying this game. I'll cap those hunting outfits from the trapper, finish spotting that wildlife, complete all of the challenges, mop up those last quests and explore that last area of the map that's just opened up. It's now weeks later. I still haven't managed to hunt 2 pristine moose. I still have quests to do, and wildlife to spot and hunt. This game has 553 different species of wildlife, not including the fucking fish, and God knows how many locations to explore. You can spend hours hunting in the swamps or fishing in a canoe. You can mug someone and steal their canoe. One time I was about to shoot this rabbit, and an eagle swooped down and grabbed it and fucked off into the sky. Cheeky bastard. But I was impressed with the eagle. The map is enormous and incredibly detailed. The game world is so stunning that there have been many occasions where I've just stopped at the top of a cliff, got out the binoculars and looked around for a while. Since I've been playing this game, I bought a cowboy hat, developed a beard fetish, I got weird urges to rob banks, get horse riding lessons, and I'm probably going to read American Inferno and some of the other literature referenced in the game. And I would have punched a suffragette by now, only they don't seem to exist anymore. I absolutely guarantee there has been a huge surge in viewers watching westerns on Netflix thanks to this game. It's a fairly consuming game if you get into it. And for the first time in my life, I've racked up more hours playing console than I did PC. And I have to be honest about that. When you think you've finished Red Dead Redemption 2, you discover that there is an epilogue. When I had finished the epilogue, I still had a fuck ton of activities to complete, with a whole new area in the south to explore, and I still had quests to do and activities to complete. When this game is over, it still has more game left than most games have game. To my shock and horror, Red Dead Redemption 2 is my game of the year 2018. It's not the same quality as Lagavulin, but it's still very nice, and you get a whole case of it. Everyone who worked on Red Dead Redemption 2 wins the following prizes. A big pat on the back from me for making such a fantastic game. You also deserve all the unpaid overtime that Rockstar did not pay you whilst you were cramming to get this game ready for release. Most importantly, you deserve everyone's respect for making the main protagonist in your game a cynic. Sure, there are complications with the way you handled the main storyline and the legitimate authenticity of the bunch of very nice criminals, bandits and thugs you tried to portray, but your main protagonists were cynical, good and intelligent. God of War says a lot about how much of the video game industry has turned into a greedy, self-consuming fuck pile. It's a good game, but the fact that God of War is considered a masterpiece shows just how low customer expectation is these days. Most AAA games should be on the level of God of War. The only reason they're not is that publishers are trying to persuade us to part with more and more money in exchange for less and less game. Some of these companies are posting the biggest profits in their history and are currently producing the shittest games they've ever made. Don't believe me? Let's go back exactly 10 years and see what sort of games are released that year. Fallout 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, Left 4 Dead, Dead Space, Call of Duty World at War, Fable 2, God of War Chains of Olympus, Mirror's Edge, Far Cry 2, Lego Batman, Star Wars The Force Unleashed, Command & Conquer Red Alert 3, Command & Conquer Kane's Wrath, Battlefield Bad Company. Some of these games I still play today, and I mean literally, I played one of these games today. The average game release in 2008 looks like a fucking critical masterpiece compared to nearly anything released by a major studio in 2018. Many AAA titles are launching in such a fucking half-broken state that they are as bad or worse than many Steam early access games. This all serves as a fairly grim reminder that when you screw more and more profit out of a game, the only thing that can suffer is the game and the player, and probably the quality of life of the developers at the coalface. Shareholders have got used to game publishers producing increased profits year on year, and now the gold rush has ended, these corporations are resorting to increasingly desperate acts of cannibalistic self-destruction to squeeze out profits regardless of the consequences. Like a starving man eating his own leg to survive, or the crew of a sailing ship tearing up the wooden floorboards to burn as fuel. These are the last desperate acts of those who know they are inevitably doomed, whatever the outcome. I still believe that the best days of video games probably lie ahead of us, but only once the industry has been told firmly that we want good games, not fucking microtransactions, paid skins, loot crates, paywalls and gambling for kids. The bubble has burst on AAA gaming publisher stock, and the market is voting with its feet. Hopefully, with weaker AAA publishers, there will be less mega corporations roaming the industry, hoovering up promising indie companies and devouring them like a plague of locusts on the land. Hopefully 2019 will be a fantastic year for gaming, where the dominance of the AAA companies is challenged by small and medium-sized publishers. But if this is going to happen, it's reliant on us supporting them. Let's hope that Outer Worlds, Metro Exodus and Super Seducer 3 live up to our lofty expectations, and 2019 is the year where we see the industry turn away from its current doomed course. I don't normally say this in a video, but the areas I've covered are so huge and I've referenced so little of it. I genuinely ask if there are games, publishers, scams or dick moves you think I left out. Please leave your thoughts in the comments for posterity's sake. Similarly, if you found an excellent game I failed to mention, a fantastic YouTuber fighting for the interests of gamers, or a publisher that did something wonderful for his customers, knock yourself out, shout it out in the comments. Before I go, I'd like to take the opportunity just to thank everyone who has helped me over 2018. I might be bad at replying, manners, and also YouTube, but please take heart in the fact that there are many scandals, controversies, and sometimes, God forbid, good video games included in these awards and in my videos in general, based solely on the information and tip-offs you guys send me. I'm more grateful than you know. Right, I certainly learned a few lessons from doing this. Here's hoping that 2019 is the beginning of something better, and not a continuation of this corporate shit fuckery. But for now, good luck, and happy hunting.